Hey friend, do you want to offer meaningful learning solutions that create behavior change, fit in the flow of work, and yield real results for your nonprofit? If yes, this is the podcast for you. Join me as I explore instructional design and leadership development best practices, as well as change management, belonging, and influence. If we haven't met yet, I'm Heather, and I've been in your shoes. I'm a learning and development consultant and founder of Skill Masters Market. Before starting my business, I led learning and leadership development initiatives for a large national nonprofit. I know what it's like to need to develop your staff quickly and effectively and to build the relationships and cut through the organizational layers to be successful. And I'm bringing all of that to you in this podcast. So block your calendar, turn off your Teams or Slack chat, and let's dive in. It's learning for good. I work with a lot of large federated nonprofits, and I'm often asked how organizations like this measure behavior change and impact. I wish I had a simple one-size-fits-all answer. But if I did, it probably wouldn't require a podcast episode. So in today's episode, I'm going to explore why measuring behavior change and impact is hard in federated nonprofits and membership associations, and share some creative ideas to measure them anyway. Let's dive in. It's learning for good. Measuring behavior change and impact is hard in most organizations, but add the complexities of federated organizations or membership associations, and it suddenly feels impossible. So let's talk about why that is. In a federated organization, what you might view as the quote-unquote corporate office or headquarters has very little control, for lack of a better word, of what the local chapters or agencies do. And they have very little insight into what they do as well. What does this mean? If I am in the national or global office of a federated nonprofit, I can't just roll out a training and make everyone take it. Same goes for a new process or a new approach I'd like them to use. Same goes for systems. So I might create a new training and add it to the LMS, but the staff who need it might never hear about it or gain access to the LMS. And the ones who do, they might go through the training and learn something new, but then return to an environment where no one else is implementing that thing. And then measurement? Well, once the training is over, you have very little access to that individual who took the training. So how do we know if their behavior changed? And how do we know if our training made an impact? That's what I want to explore today. Now, I'm going to start by saying you need to trust that you're doing the right things. So when you're creating learning experiences, you want to make sure you're tying those learning experiences to the organization's strategies. That way you're tying it to impact. So what is it the organization is trying to accomplish? How does this learning experience help people in the organization accomplish those things? And then the second piece of this is to embed behavior change techniques into the experience. Because it's one thing to deliver a bunch of information and then the person has some information that they're probably not going to remember anyway and doesn't change their behavior. It's another thing to create an experience that allows them to practice, to think about those systems that are in place, processes that are in place, think about the support that they're going to need, tie those new behaviors to existing behaviors, break it down into something really simple and achievable, those kinds of things. That's a completely different experience. And so when you're creating learning experiences, we want to make sure we're doing both that organizational piece and the individual piece. And if we're doing that, if we're tying it to the organizational strategies and we're embedding those behavior change techniques for the individual, we can trust that we're doing the right things. Doesn't necessarily help you with measurement, doesn't necessarily give you data, but there is an element of trust that you're doing the right thing. Now let's get into data. So how can you actually measure what you're doing and whether it is successful? So we can use surveys for self-reporting. So we do, if they've registered for that training in the LMS, hopefully you have an email address for them and you have access to them through that email address. And so we can send surveys after the learning is complete, months down the line, and ask them to self-report about whether those behaviors changed and if the organization is being impacted. There are a lot of challenges with self-reporting, but it is an option, right? Will they self-report accurately? We don't know. Will they have kind of an accurate perception of what's really happening? We don't know. Will they even complete the survey? We don't know, right? But it is an option to collect some data. A second option would be to tap into their supervisor. Can we provide some observation tools for their supervisors? So then it's not them self-reporting, it's their supervisor watching, observing, and making some notes, providing some feedback back into that national or global office, that association office, whatever it is, so that they know they can see whether behavior has changed and whether impact is being made. Now, a challenge here, obviously, is just access to those supervisors. Do you know who they are if they're not technically in your organization? But it's an option. And we probably should do more around supervisors anyway when it comes to learning. We probably should be engaging them. They should probably know and be aware of what their staff are experiencing and learning, what the expectation is for those staff when they get done with that learning experience. So it's a great way to kind of extend the learning and get the supervisors involved. Another option is to add site visits. So if you are in the national or global office or the membership association and you want to know if the behavior has changed, if impact is being made, you could potentially schedule some site visits where you know which organization they came from. When they attended that learning experience, you go to that location and observe what's happening for yourself. This is a great way to see things in action. It costs a lot of money if you're going to do site visits across a large organization, but it's an option, and you can do a smaller sample size, and it gives you some data for measuring behavior change. Now, the impact of the learning, the impact on the organization and not just the individual, still is a little bit more challenging to assess, to measure. And so this is where I would like us to think a little bit differently and maybe get a little bit creative in how we're measuring that. So for example, do the local chapters, the local agencies, do they already do any reporting to the national or global office? There's a good chance they are reporting something. And so is there an opportunity to gather data that they're already reporting to support, to prove impact, or to give you information on adapting what you're doing so that you can have that impact? And if they're not already reporting something that would be helpful in that way, is there an opportunity to add a question to that survey or whatever it is so that you are collecting impact data? Now, you wouldn't be able to do that with every single learning experience, but there might be some particularly important learning experiences that you want to collect that level of data about. And so, can you leverage those existing reporting structures to collect impact data? Now, these options are not perfect, but they can work. We can do surveys for self-reporting. We can provide observation tools for supervisors. We can potentially do site visits, and we can potentially leverage existing reporting structures. Again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's going to depend on your organization. It's going to depend on the learning experience itself, but it can be done. And I'm sure there are other ways to do this as well. So I'm really curious, how are you measuring behavior change and impact in your organization? If you're in a nonprofit, head over to the Nonprofit L&D Collective and share with us there, because everybody has this question and everyone will benefit from what you have to share. If you're not in a nonprofit, I'd still love to hear what works for you, because I think we still have a lot to learn from other organizations. So send me a message on LinkedIn and let's chat about measurement and evaluation. When one of us gets better, we all get better. So let's share and learn from each other. I'll see you next time on Learning for Good. Hey friend, was this episode helpful for you? Did you like what you heard? Do you want more content like this? Here are 3 things you can do. Hit subscribe. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast app of choice. Share this episode with a colleague. This means so much to me personally. I read every review, but it also helps me learn what content you like most so I can create more of what you want. All right, turn that Teams or Slack chat back on when you're ready, and I'll see you next time on Learning for Good.